Hello and welcome to another episode of Will You Accept This Rose? I'm everyone's favorite hostess, not T-shirt, Caitlin, Veronica Gail. Alongside me is Ash Stepper and Wilnir Lewis. Guys, how are you doing today?
I am doing exceptional outside of me messing up my finger at work today. That's a conversation for another day, but outside of that, I'm doing great.
I'm also doing well. Surprise shoddy, I'm back, rising from the dead as an alum, and we're here. I'm excited.
Ash, we're so happy you're back. Alum can't leave us. Don't worry, we love Rose too much. So before we even get into our conversation of today, we did have someone in this group get a little famous. For all our Seton Hall fans, one of us was on a video on Seton Hall chicks supporting The Bachelor. Wilnir, do you want to talk about it?
I mean, I'm a famous person, you feel me? Like, I just have the personality for social media. You know, they got me in my element watching Bachelorette. It's an experience. Watching it with myself and the people I was watching with. We were watching with Ben, Christian, Haley, and everybody else. Like, it's an experience to watch The Bachelorette. And they just caught me in my element. I believe when they recorded me, I think Thomas got the group rose week 2 or something like that. So it was an experience to say the least, because the way that Thomas and Katie were getting together after that group date, I mean, it was crazy. So again, I had the sports side of me kind of coming out when I watched The Bachelorette, and it's an experience to say the least. And they got me on film. They caught me in 4K. It happens, you feel me? But I'm glad that it was on social media.
An icon. So speaking of that group date you were discussing, let's dive in. We start week 2 with that sex-themed group date. Guys, who stood out to you?
Carl stood out to me, but not in a good way. This was when I started getting the red flags of him, and I was like, this guy, he's a little strange. I just felt like he overdid it. Like, everything that he was doing in that date, I think he was the one that used the safe word of, like, peaches and everything. And he was just doing a little bit too much for my liking, and then it only got worse from there.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. Like, that is a very interesting first group date to have. Like, who knew that socks actually helped out women in the bed? I didn't know that until they did the whole quiz thing. But in terms of somebody that stuck out, like Carl, I mean, he stunk, to say the least. Like, he was going on and on, rambling about whatever the hell he was rambling about. So Carl was definitely, I don't really know. But to say somebody else, I mean, Connor B and his musical showing, like, I definitely did enjoy that. And when he went to the pianos and said that he was good with his fingers too, like, he knew what he was doing. And I thought that stood out to me the most. Like, Connor is somebody that has definitely been one of my favorites on this show, just because I feel like he's completely out the box, and I kind of like that for somebody on the show. And just what he did musically, like, that was exceptional.
Connor B was my pick too. I mean, Catman, he just sticks out. I don't know. Catman is now the music man. So he's killing it out here. He's definitely a favorite of mine of the season so far, but he stood out to me. But we have to discuss him. Mike P, the virgin of the season. There's always one. He was thrown into that group date. What a producer pick, am I right? So what do we think? How do we think he did? What are our thoughts?
I think he rose to the occasion. However, I think with everything, ABC almost does too much when they know that, like, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette is, like, something. Like, when Colton was a virgin, they, like, made it a whole thing. And now that, like, Katie, she, like, her entrance thing last season was the dildo, so now it's okay. Katie, sex, like that. And so, of course, they're going to get someone that's a virgin, so that it's Katie, sex, virgin person on the show, sex date. And I just feel like they were doing too much, and I'm glad he rose to the occasion and didn't, like, get too embarrassed by all of it, but it honestly kind of exploited him, in my opinion. And I think especially for the first big group date, like, that was just unnecessary.
It was definitely blown out of proportion. I felt like Mike also blew it out of proportion too. I would say he's a better man than me in terms of how he did the poem, because for me, I would have finessed my way out of that. Like, I don't think I would have told everybody that I was a virgin right then and there. Like he said, he wanted to have that conversation one-on-one with Katie. And I feel like that is a conversation that you have one-on-one. That's not a conversation that you have with other people all in the room when you have everybody doing all these other things. And now you're the last person going up. And it's like, oh yeah, everybody else is talking about sex, but I never had sex before. Like, the way that he was just like I felt like he was stressing way too much about it. Like every time they would cut to like the interview with him, like he was crying, like he was basically sweating, like he was emotional, and I just felt like I don't think that should be something that you're that emotional about. Like I understand you're saving yourself for marriage, but you knew that you were going to be on national television, and you knew that sex was going to have to come up one way or another. Like, embrace the moment, which again he did with the poem. I completely felt like that was the best wave of action to go to, but I don't know. I just felt like it was slightly blown out of proportion, just a little bit.
I have to agree. I mean, it doesn't need to be a big deal. It's only a big deal if they made it a big deal, and they made it a big deal. I think he handled it the best way he could, though. That's not like such an uncomfortable position. They really put him in there, and I think he did the best he could. But definitely, I don't know. It felt so staged. It was like, really, of course he's on this group date. I don't know. Not a huge fan, but let's dive into another group date, the mud wrestling group date. Guys, how do we even feel about the fact they were mud wrestling? Like, what are our thoughts on this?
I thought it was so weird, honestly. Like, they're also, while watching, I was like, I wonder how much they pay in costuming for all of them, because they, I'm sure, provided all the outfits. And then Caitlyn and Tayshia, I'm sure that's way more expensive than Chris Harrison ever was in terms of wardrobe, because they were just so cute. And that's what I took away from it more. But then also, as we were watching, I was like, honestly, this is kind of weird watching these grown men wrestle and roll in mud together. Like, I don't know, it was something that almost dragged out too long, and I was like, what is going on here?
Speaking of the expenses of their outfit, real quick, I'm throwing this out there. I follow an Instagram page. It's called the Style Spotter, and it just goes through and says what outfits they have and how expensive they are. So this outfit that Tayshia wore at the promo was $714 on sale. I don't know who's costuming them, but they are wearing the most expensive things ever. I recommend this Instagram page, by the way, and just seeing how expensive their outfits are. But Wilnir, take it away.
I'm not going to lie. A guy like me is going to find that for $15 somewhere, some shape, some form. I ain't Old Navy, like, have you heard of it? Forever 21. Like, I mean, I'm not going to spend $700 on an outfit. Like, I respect the hustle. Don't get me wrong, but no. But in terms of the mud wrestling date, and that was just uncomfortable to watch. Like, you know, shout out Andrew, like, you know, doing his thing, Mr. Rugby Man. I mean, he was basically in his element, you know, doing the mud wrestling date, because that's kind of what rugby is. But overall, like, I just didn't enjoy it whatsoever. Like, it just felt weird. Like, you're here to find a wife, but one of the obstacles that you have to go through is mud wrestling another guy in order for you to show your love to your potential suitor. Like, again, for something that's week 2, that's just not a great thing to do. And that would be degrading to me if I was on the show, or, you know, if I were trying to go for a girl on the street and she was like, oh, no, you got to mud wrestle my ex or something like that. Like, that's just not different vibes, like, whatsoever. So for them to have to do that, it was just weird to see.
I love a competitive date. Anytime, like, it's like a back and forth, I do find them interesting. But the straight up fighting dates, like, they'll do a boxing date almost every season. Like, no. The toxic energy, especially when guys do it, I feel like it's just very toxic masculinity, which is just, it's a no from me. So I personally was not a fan of this date, but there was some tea. There was some drama between Aaron and Cody. How do we feel about it? How do we feel that it went down? Guys, what are our thoughts?
I really want to know the backstory behind it, because I felt like they just, like, they said, like, oh yeah, they have beef and they know each other back home, and something was said on social media, and that was kind of all that we got from it. So I don't know if there is some research that people have done in the Bachelorette community to know what that beef was between Aaron and Cody, but I felt like I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about why this is what it is. Like, they just said, oh yeah, he did something on social media, or Cody did something on social media. That's it. Like, give me more of a backstory. If you really want to bring it up, and if you really want to make it a story, say a little bit more. Like, have somebody explain what happened. And I felt like that's just something that needed to be explained. I felt like either Katie should have brought it up, or Aaron should have brought it up, or even, you know, Cody could have brought it up. Like, what actually happened and what actually went down. But I don't know, like it seemed unnecessary, and I'm glad that Cody got packed up because I didn't even like him in the first place. But it was just, I don't know. I felt like there should have been more that was said with that whole beef between them two.
Yeah, I think they made it a plot point just for the sake of making it a plot point. Like there wasn't any like lead up to it or anything like that. They just like threw them in the ring together, threw them in some mud, and they were like, "Oh, by the way, they're like this heated because they actually hate each other." And it was just like kind of strange. And honestly, that whole beef made me think that Aaron was a little bit sus for like an episode or so, and then he kind of redeemed himself because I was like, this guy's kind of weird too, because it's always not just like the good guy and the bad guy, it's usually two bad guys that cause the drama, and one like kind of frames himself as a good guy. But I think Aaron actually is a good guy to an extent, and Cody was just sus. And so I'm glad that that fight like kind of led up to him getting like gone.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad Cody is gone. Just, it was annoying. I was like, we don't need this unnecessary drama, especially because at the roast ceremony, which we're about to get into, there was actually like, I thought, good drama. Like this whole situation with Carl telling Katie, let's just get into it. Carl telling Katie what about that people are there for the wrong reasons. How do we feel about that? Should he have said anything? Should he have not? Thoughts?
I think he had poor timing. I think it was like, oh, you're about to give out these roses. Here's the pot. Let me go stir it. And I don't know if he felt insecure in himself because he was kind of like a more relevant person, or at least he got a more relevant person edit. So it seemed like he was like pretty okay. And honestly, shouldn't that matter more than, and like your relationship with Katie matter more than like everyone else, in my opinion? And I don't like how he makes everything kind of like a contest. He's like, oh, I need to redeem myself. And I don't know, in a relationship, I don't think it should work that way, even though this isn't a conventional relationship anyway, because it's on TV, but still. I just thought it was like poor timing and him like just being a pot stirrer.
Yeah, the crazy thing is though, with what he said, like he wasn't wrong by any stretch of the imagination, which we found out the week after that. And maybe Carl was actually right saying that some people might be here for another motive, not here for Katie. But I think it was him just being a little salty because he didn't get that group date rose earlier on. And it was just like, you know what, let me try to stir something up and let me try to make myself seem like a good person by telling Katie, like, hey, some people are here to potentially not be your husband just to get fame or something else. And I felt like he just went about it the wrong way. If he did have that information, like going to tell Katie, like that's fine. But like when everybody kept asking him, like, oh, who do you think it is? Or, like, why did you say that? He just kept saying like, oh, I just have this feeling. Oh, I just have this feeling. Oh, I just have this feeling. Like, if you have this feeling, like, shouldn't you research first and then tell? Or if you actually know something, shouldn't you then tell and say like, oh, this is what I know? Like going on and saying, oh, I'm not going to say who I think it is. Like, that's just childish at the end of the day. But again, the crazy thing is, though, is that he wasn't wrong saying that people might have been there for an ulterior motive.
I mean, here's the thing with The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. They auditioned for the show without even knowing who the Bachelor or Bachelorette is going to be. So most of them were probably there for the wrong reasons, to be completely honest. So him saying this, I was like, as a viewer, we all know that, like, yeah, probably like half the guys there are there just for the fame and just for the clout. But the fact that he didn't give names, I was like, bro, like, I don't know. That was weak. Like, give names. Like, snitch a little, share, not that snitching's good, but snitch a little, share with the group. I don't know. I thought it was ridiculous. But then we see the men in the house switching it around, changing the storyline. Guys, how do we think they handled it?
I think they handled it about as good as they could because like nobody was on Carl's side by any stretch of the imagination. So for Mike to come up after, Katie asked if he will accept this rose and say that like everybody is coming together in solidarity to say that Carl should get the hell out of here and then find his way back to wherever he came from. Like, I think that that's probably as good of a way that you're going to be able to handle that situation, because then had Katie stated like, oh yeah, she was potentially going to keep Carl. And if she did, then ooh, that house would have been sizzling hot that next week if Carl would have stayed. So I think they handled it about as good as they can because, again, Carl wasn't saying anything, and nobody was going to rat out on themselves, even if they did come for an ulterior motive. So being able to just say, like, oh, yeah, we all think that he should be gone, like, I think that helped out the house at least for that moment. And I think that's probably the best way they could handle it.
I think it became a contest of who can be Katie's knight in shining armor, kind of, and who can like be the one to like defend her and be like, no, some of us are here for the right reasons and all that. And they use those opportunities, I feel like a lot of the times in these shows, that like when someone messes up or looks bad, they can use it as their opportunity to swoop in and make themselves look good. But I feel like it's almost doing too much then.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I guess they handled it the best way they could. I just think this whole thing was unnecessary. Like, Carl, keep your mouth shut. Like, come on. Like, don't half snitch. Full snitch or don't snitch. What is this halfness? But anyway, moving on to week 3. A lot of stuff happened in week 3. We start with the circle in the round group kind of date. What was everyone's thoughts on this date? Very mixed reviews on social media. So I'm curious to see what you guys have to say.
It looked like what I would imagine an AA meeting to be. I've never been to AA, but I feel as though that's kind of the way that they're set up. And I also don't necessarily think that Nick Viall was the right person from like Bachelor Nation to host this, because he's kind of a more controversial and like dramatic figure and someone that has been villainized a few times. So like, of all people, why would you have him come back and have everyone like unpack their drama? I also don't think it was necessarily fair to the men, because like when you go on, you're going to have to share personal things like in front of a camera and then ultimately with like the whole country. But to do it also in front of the cameras, in front of this woman, in front of this other person who's more or less famous and all the other men, like, and this early on, I felt like kind of put them on the spot. And made it so inorganic, where it's usually on like a one-on-one or even like a date where they pull off like the bachelor or bachelorette to the side and then they like kind of unpack their stuff. And I think that's more genuine than like sitting in a circle feeling the pressure, like, okay, Wilnir just shared his drama, Veronica just went too, so like I guess I have to go now. And it just seemed fake.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I really didn't like the idea of doing that as a group date, because I mean, everything that everyone had stated was like stuff that was very deep inside, and like a lot of those conversations and a lot of those stories that they had stated, like those aren't things that you would share, in front of 8 to 10 random individuals and this girl that you're trying to meet that you only knew for about 3 weeks now. Like, I felt like it was a producer thing. Like, I mean, we got to admit that. And, they were able to, I guess, share their stories and, maybe it touched people who might relate to those stories who are watching the show. Like, I guess that's a good part of it. But overall, just having that as a group date and having, people tell these stories about, alcoholism and talking about, what Katie had went through and stuff like that on national TV. Like, I felt uncomfortable watching it. And I just don't like that you're doing it that early on in front of all these people, where I feel like those are conversations that you have like later on down the line when you're only having about 6 or 5 other contestants left, and you really establish that connection, like Katie established the connection with all of these individuals. Like, they're saying their stories and it's all going to blow up in their face when they're voted off eventually. And it's like, oh my God, like for me, I would feel like I just shared this story to, somebody I wanted to be my wife and to everybody watching on national television. And now I don't even get the opportunity to make her my wife or to make her my girl or anything like that. Like, it's just, I don't know how to close this out, but it's just like, I would feel so distraught doing that.
I hated this. It was just weird. Why was Nick Viall there? Like that, okay, you host a podcast. That doesn't mean you're right for this therapy circle, to be completely honest. That didn't make sense. But the one thing I did like is a lot of times, I'm going to use Matt James as an example. They share something deep. Thank you for sharing. And we hear nothing from the Bachelor or Bachelorette. Katie matched their energy, and then she shared something deep too. And I think that added to the whole experience and like made it feel less like weird in a way, because it's like, okay, they all shared, you know? But of course, drama ensues. Thomas, he comes in causing drama. Guys, what do we think about Thomas? What do we think about what he's doing here?
Hot take, I don't hate what he did. I think he was being more honest than many other people are. And I think in this age too, the chances of you getting a ring or a husband or a wife at the end of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette is way lower. I'm no statistician, but the chances of you becoming an influencer or someone with a large social media following and then potential other like job opportunities from this show, way higher. Look at like all the other people that have been on the show before that are now like influencers and big like social media people. Even like Tayshia and Caitlyn, who were on the show, now have this hosting gig where they're making thousands of dollars. Like, yes, Tayshia found love too, so she like, I guess, won both ways. But I don't necessarily hate Thomas for being honest about it. I think he like fumbled the bag in the way that he went about things maybe, and he continued to put his foot in his mouth. But I think he was saying what many other people there probably were thinking or were on the same page as.
Actually, let me tell you, it's not a hot take whatsoever, because I completely agree. Like, I feel like in the back of everybody's mind, they have to think like, oh yeah, what's going to happen if I'm not selected? Like, if I'm not going to be the one going down on the knee to propose to Katie? Like, there's 30 plus people that start to show off and only one person is going to be selected at the end of the day. Like, I felt like Thomas was just weird in the way that he's delivering stuff. Like in that group date, like when he was trying to explain himself, like I felt like he explained himself weird. But like outside of that, like I don't disagree with what he said whatsoever. Like, and I don't disagree with him trying to take more time for Katie, because I feel like if he really does love Katie, which that's something that only he's going to be able to know. If you really do love Katie, you're going to step up and you're going to try to show out and you're going to try to do what you can to get more time and to show that, hey, I'm the person for you. So for you to step in and try to take more time, so be it. Do what you got to do. Step up, show your ground, my brother. You feel me? But like at the end of the day, all these other people, I feel like they should have it in the back of their minds, like, oh yeah, what happens if I don't get Katie? Like they're all acting like, oh my God, Thomas, you're disrespecting me. I can't believe you're here for all other motives and not Katie. Like this, I can't believe it. And it's like, all right, like, come on. Like if I love a girl, like of course I'm going to step up and show what I can do and do extra things to make sure that she knows that I want her. And at the end, if I'm going on national TV, I'm going to want the people to know, like, hey, what's going on? Like, if Willie Willow 9 would be on national television right now, I'm going to make myself known. I'm going to make my character known to the national audience. And that's what Thomas is doing. So I have no beef, no gripes, no hatred whatsoever on what Thomas is doing.
A lot of or every time when they go on this show, they don't know who the Bachelor or the Bachelorette's going to be. So for them to say, oh, I'm here for Katie, if it were, I don't know, Hannah Ann from a few years ago. Oh, I'm here for Hannah Ann. Oh, I'm here for Hannah Brown. I'm here for Veronica Gail. Like they're there for whoever ABC decides to be there. And also I think it's not shown enough that sometimes like I'm sure these guys don't end up liking the girl and they just like kind of see themselves out. And the show makes it in a way where everyone is in love with the Bachelor, the Bachelorette. But I don't know. I doubt all 30 of those men were ecstatic that it was Katie and that they were actually there for her, if that makes sense. So no hate towards Thomas for that at all.
It's a two-way street. So just because they're on the show doesn't mean they're going to like the Bachelor, Bachelorette, and vice versa. You know? And it's a 3 for 3 on the not so hot take. I agree with Thomas. I think everything he said was valid. He goes in the second time. Obviously the guys are going to get mad, but like be more aggressive. If you haven't talked to Katie, then go talk to Katie. Like that's your problem. Like, sorry, you're not aggressive enough. You know, you have to be aggressive when you go on this show, but let's get into the one-on-ones. We had 2 one-on-ones in these 2 weeks. We had one with Greg and one with Michael. Which one stood out to you guys the most?
you know me, I gotta go with my man's from Jersey City, New Jersey. I mean, Greg, like, even if he wasn't from Jersey, I just felt like that date was a little bit better, like in terms of Katie and Greg being together. The actual date, of course, I'll go dune buggy over fishing. I'm not that big of a fishing person. I think riding on the dune buggy is pretty cool, and I would whip the HE double hockey sticks out of a dune buggy, to say the least. But I think in terms of the actual date, I just felt like Katie and Greg's connection was a little bit better on that one-on-one. Like Michael A., like I understand his story, you know, rest in peace to his girl and all of that. But like there's with both Michael A. and even Hunter, who brought up his story too, like I feel like you don't go to the Bachelorette to try to correct those issues that they both had. And I just feel like for Michael, like for you to find love for what happened to you, like I don't think going on the Bachelorette is the best way to try to get through that. And also, man, the kid, bro, like James is just at home waiting for his pops to come home. Like I like the kid, like depending on how long Michael A. stays, he's gonna be without his pops, man. But that's a story for another time. I feel like the connection between Katie and Greg was a little bit better. Well, not even a little bit better, was definitely better. And I don't know, like, I just feel like Michael A., like his, I don't know, that date was just interesting to me. Like, I felt like there was a connection, but not as strong as Katie and Greg.
Different opinion than you, Wilnir. Very opposite opinion. I think, again, it was very producer chosen. Like, okay, we're going to have a group date where all the boys have to like reveal their trauma, but we're going to save the one guy who actually has trauma and we're going to put him to the side and we're not going to add him to the group date. I feel like they did that on purpose so that he could have this moment to like kind of step up. But this could be a controversial opinion, even though my last one I guess wasn't, but I don't know if Greg is going to make it that far, and I don't know if it's going to be a happy ending with him. I don't think it is. I saw a TikTok about it the other day. I have it up right here. I think that is going to be almost like a Brie from last season where they like connected really well in the beginning and everyone was team Brie. And I guess it's almost like a shooting star where it gets like really hot and then it fades out. And I think that can happen with Greg. But apparently I pulled up the TikTok.
Fans are freaking out that Katie Thurston might have just shaded Greg online. Could be a spoiler, but not really, so start scrolling if you don't want any more details. When the guy next to you is getting interrogated about wanting to be the next Bachelor and you gotta pretend to be disgusted while hiding your acting career liked by Katie Thurston. She could just be liking it as a joke, I mean it is a meme, or she could be shading him because we don't know how the rest of the season plays out. Greg is definitely one of the frontrunners. We saw that he checked on her when she was upset this week. Michael A. is also a frontrunner as well. Connor the Cat is a contender. She clearly has a connection with Justin, and Andrew S. is also going places. And we don't know what's gonna happen with Blake, but let me know if you guys think that this is shady or if it's just a meme.
So that's like kind of interesting. But then one of Greg's older sisters takes to the comments. She goes to the comments and hold on, let's see what she like basically like tried to defend Greg and like came at Katie for it and was like, why would you say that? Basically just like yelling at her. And then eventually Katie unliked the picture. Greg's sister took down her comment. But I feel like that's just a little too sus. And it can't be like a happy ending for them if this all occurred. You know what I mean? And I just think, oh, and this is like Greg's like fully adult sister. And she said, at Katie Thurston, likes this post, but was such a supporter of removing the toxicity and Mean Girls when she was on Matt's season. You'd think if those intentions were genuine, she'd just have just as much of an issue with this post as well. Really disappointed in this. So obviously she's defending her brother because he got exposed, in my opinion. So I liked Greg in the beginning. He's a local Middlesex County king, but I don't think it's going to go well.
I still like Greg. Greg's date was my favorite over Michael's. But I have to agree, if you watched yours last week, my hot take was, I think Greg is going to self-eliminate and then she's going to end up with no one because she's going to be heartbroken over Greg. I'm convinced. I think that's what's going to happen. I'm still stan Greg, though. He's still my top runner right now. But let's go into the fallen. You know, we saw people leave. Anyone we were sad to see leave? Were we expecting everyone? What were thoughts?
I'm glad everybody's gone. I really had no connection to any of the people that were on or that left already. Like, good riddance to y'all. See y'all later. Hope y'all doing great. Hope y'all found a new girl. I don't know. Like, it was just, hey, you're here for 2 or 3 weeks or 2 weeks and you're gone. All right. I see you later. Good riddance. Don't let the doorknob hit you where the Galore might split you.
I'll agree with that. I don't think that anyone besides Greg, and I guess like whoever they make like the villain of the week, like I feel like this week it was kind of Thomas, last week or earlier this week it was like Carl. They like always pick one guy to pick on. I feel like other than those like standout people, I don't think there's anyone that stands out. I feel like they only stand out when the edit makes them stand out. Like there isn't anyone that I'm like, oh, I really like him. A lot of the times even, and we're on week 3, I have to wait until the interview to see their name on the bottom to like remember actually who they are. And Connor B, I still have to like think like, okay, who is the cat guy? Oh, it was Connor B, to like remember. I don't know.
I have to agree. No, everyone who went home, I was happy to see go. I think she made the right choices so far. She's doing great. But real quick, lightning round. Who do we think is going to win the Bachelorette? And who do you think could be the next Bachelor?
Well, I had either Connor B or Greg, and Ash just kind of tore into both of them. So I don't know. I'm gonna stick by both of them, I guess. But I had the pencil in my hand, and I scratched off Greg because I don't know, those facts that Ash had brought up was pretty good TikTok facts. So I guess Connor B is gonna win the Bachelorette. So that's that. In terms of who's gonna be the next Bachelor. Right now, I think Aaron would make a good Bachelor because I like the way, like, I just like how his personality and I like how he's kind of like going after it and just like being upfront with people. Like, I think he would make a good season and I would be tapped in if Aaron is the next Bachelor, but I don't know. Those are my picks.
I think Connor B is going to end up winning. I think they had their little moment in the first episode when he was the cat, and they've kind of hit it off. They're both like a little quirky. I think it's going to go well. But in terms of the next Bachelor, I think Michael A, maybe. Because I think they're starting to plant the seeds because they're trying, it's early on, and they're making everyone really empathetic of him. And they also haven't had someone that's a parent in a while. And so to spin it that way, because I know they're trying to like steer away from all the like young, like 23-year-olds, because like they usually don't end up actually getting married and stuff and look to become an influencer. So I think Michael A could be good.
I completely agree with Ash. I had Connor B as my pick to win, and I think Michael with the sad backstory, they're really setting him up where I think it would be a really good season. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. But that's all the time we have today for this episode of Will You Accept This Rose? Ash and Wilnir, thank you guys so much for being here with me. We'll see you next time.